at a later date. That is the flood resiliency plan update, is that correct?
Basically we're counting the CDBG-DR hearing as the flood resiliency plan because there's a lot of overlap, so.
Gotcha. Yep. Perfect. So scratch 8G from your agenda. We do not need an executive session. There are no clerk's office licenses or permits under the consent agenda, and the manager has no contracts to execute either. So motion to approve the agenda as amended would be in order.
So moved.
Second. It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. Under visitors and communications, anyone wishing to address the council regarding an item that is not on the agenda? Hearing and seeing no one, we'll move along to the consent agenda. Council will be approving the minutes of February 3rd, 2026. As I said, there are no clerk's office licenses and permits to approve. We'll be certifying the 2025 TIF annual report that was in your packet, and we will be approving the 2026 coin drop schedule that was also in your packet, and the manager has no contracts to execute this week. So motion to approve would be in order. Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, folks? Yes.
I sent a correction or a revision to Cheryl for the minutes to add under, I'm sorry, 8, new business under D, the ICE preparedness statement. There was nothing in there that indicated what the resolution was that we had agreed to post that statement on the website. So I just asked if we could amend that section to include that.
I don't know that it was, we didn't have a formal vote on it. There was no resolution and vote.
I know that there was, I didn't remember there being a vote, but we did agree to post the statement on the website.
Yes.
So I just wanted, there's something that.
Just a sentence like that says council agreed to post the statement explicating the
insert
situation on the
that, and I
website.
sent the corrected version to all of you.
Well,
okay,
it's
thank you.
on the webpage, so you could say council posted the statement on the webpage.
Yes.
Because it's done. Yeah, that would be fine if there's no objection from the council. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. The motion carries. Council, we're at 4A. We'll be approving the city warrants for the week of 2/11/26. Motion would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Are you abstaining, Councilor Smalley?
Nope,
No, not this
not
week. You don't
today.
have to. All right. Good deal. Then we will move on to the city clerk's report.
Okay, I have a couple of things. First of all, I want to bring to everyone's attention in the room and online that the clerk's office is closed Monday, February 16th, and that is the actual due date of your third quarter property taxes. So therefore, the taxes date will now be Tuesday, the 17th by 4:30 p.m. With the holiday, it just pushes it off to the next business day. Secondly, to date, I have sent out 256 absentee ballots. The requests are still coming in. I got 5 today, and we advise you to make your requests sooner than later. And it is a reminder, it has to be renewed every year. Everyone who did call today, they said, oh, I guess I didn't remember that. So I'm just going to keep reminding people. I am trying to post every other day on Front Porch Forum in regards to both the taxes and the absentee ballots. And thirdly, dog license renewals are still underway. The due date is April 1st. It's always a good practice to have the updated rabies certificate in hand when you are renewing the license. However, we can always do a quick search to see if it is a valid certificate on hand.
Thank you. Any questions, council? So the 300 and change that you said, how does that compare with previous years?
The 256?
256, I'm sorry.
It's about a level with what, for this time. I mean, we
Okay.
still have a good 4 weeks to go before the election. And
About where it is now.
yes, especially for school budget. They tend to be smaller.
Understood. Any other? Yes, sir.
How many new voters have we registered?
I have not gathered that
It's
information.
okay.
But I can get that to you.
I'm just curious.
Yep.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, council, we'll move on to the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board. I'll call that board to order. I believe we have a number of licenses for consideration. Would you read those into the record?
Certainly. Forget-Me-Not Flowers and Gifts, they are renewing their second-class liquor license. Walgreens is renewing their second-class liquor license, their tobacco certification, and the tobacco substitute. Granite City Market is renewing their second-class liquor license. They all have been vetted through the police chief and Nick Copping, the fire marshal, for
Thank
approval.
you. Motion would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second,
Second.
please. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. Motion carries. Liquor and Cannabis Control Board is adjourned. Mr. Manager,
Thank you, Mayor.
yours.
Appreciate it.
I'll miss you, buddy. Maybe a few weeks.
I'll miss it too. It'll be.
No, you won't. Oh, my God. Blatantly lied.
Obligated to say that. So we had a couple updates for the council and the public. You've, I think, all heard about the ice fishing tournament that was supposed to happen at the Dix Reservoir last Sunday. We, on the staff level, we had issues with it, and we were working on legislation with Senator Watson to deal with this in the future. But just to report that there were no shows. The event was canceled before. The night before. So we had staff, Brian was there with the water treatment staff. We had police there. But luckily the event was canceled and there were no participants who showed up. And so there was no incident, which is great.
And we're happy to report the fishing was awesome.
There is another one scheduled in June, but that's hopefully our legislation will go into effect. And that's what we're working on that. And we're exploring other avenues to sort of address it. But luckily there were no confrontations. We're very happy for that. And there was no intrusion into the Dix. So that was all sort of worked out well for the city. An update on the overnight shelter, which is closed now for the first time in what feels like a long time. They have, just a stat from you from Tess, last year the shelter was open a total of 10 nights in the season. So far this year they've been open 24 nights. And we're not even really halfway through the winter here. So there's a lot of volunteers, burning the midnight oil here to keep people safe and out of the cold. So, it's been a lot of work. Fortunately, the temperatures have gotten to a point where they don't need to be open tonight, and hopefully they get a little bit of a reprieve. But so far, 24 nights this season alone, which more than double what they were open all of last season. They've been full most nights. There's 12 beds at the shelter. And so they've had a pretty good recurring community of people who are there most evenings. And just as a reminder, they monitor the weather. They're really looking at, their threshold is really 0 or below is what they're looking at when they activate. The RFQ for the Prospect Heights developers has been out, and the proposals are starting to come in. I know I received one today. Those are due tomorrow. So we're, as we talked about, that's a condition for the CDBG DR grants, and we're showing our good faith effort to find developers for that project. So working with BADC on that, and very eager to see what comes in as that deadline is tomorrow. I mentioned to the council, I sent a brief email to the council this morning that we learned that we were recipients of 2 CDS grants, congressionally directed spending grants, sponsored by our delegation in Washington. The 2 awards we were notified of was $3.3 million for Prospect Heights and $591,000 for Gunners Brook. Both those projects were funded under CDBG-DR, but there's still, I'm working with our partners like BADC to figure out our next steps. So I don't really have a lot of information for the council other than the good news that they were funded. These applications were put in a year ago or more, so they've been pending for some time, and so we've obviously been lucky in the interim to get them funded, but there are still needs at Prospect Heights, for example, in terms of development of the beyond what CDBG-DR is funding, incentives for developers, so to get housing up there. So there still may be needs for that. I don't have that information for you now. The only information I have is what I shared with you, that they were awarded, and I'm working with people like Josh at BADC to figure out our next steps on this. And then finally, as the mayor alluded to, I will be out of the country for a couple of weeks, going on a family vacation. And I've notified the council that Chief Brad Vail will be acting city manager in my absence. I've asked the chief to, when he's making this, he'll have decision-making authority that I would normally have. I've asked him to consult with the council and the mayor on to notify and consult on, when there's obviously a big decisions, and also when there's matters of finance, to make sure he finds consensus with Christina, our finance director, and when there's matters of HR, to find consensus with Jean Gallian, our HR director, just because those are, I really trust the department heads in my absence to run their departments, but those are obviously things that sort of money and people transcend sort of individuals' departments. So I know Chief Vail will do a good job of that. And he will be in charge in my absence. So he accepted the offer to do that, which is great. No one else stood up.
Didn't get a key to the office, though, did he?
No, he won't be moving into the office.
If you do want to speak with him, you'll have to go down to the PD.
Public safety, yep.
It's all good. Any questions for the manager? So the shelter has done a great job. I know some of you have volunteered. I believe Councilor Guston, you have. Councilor Hilgarten, you have. I believe Councilor Spalding, you have.
I've donated, I didn't.
You've done it. That's still volunteering. Don't sell yourself short. No, but so we've been talking a lot. I'm committed to getting that position funded on some level by the state. So I've been talking with our delegation and others and the administration about how we do that. But one of the points that I made that if you look at the state hotel program and you just look at the 24 days that Nicholas, or 24 nights that Nicholas just described, that would cost the state in excess of $30,000 if it was under the hotel motel program. And as the manager pointed out, we're halfway through the winter, and that doesn't include the good work that Tess and others do, during the warmer months. So, I think we can demonstrate the value. We're having those conversations every day. I'm committed to getting that position funded and easing a little bit of the stress that we're seeing on our budget. So hopefully we can get that done. Sorry, folks. Any questions for the manager?
I got one.
Yes.
There's a path between Foss and Berlin Street that we're having some trouble with residents trying to get access from Foss Street onto Berlin. Gets plowed. I guess it's a city walkway. Judy Copping brought it to my attention that there are some families that are trying to get their students from Foss Street to their bus stop on Berlin, but it's being plowed in, and then the salt bucket that's there as well is being plowed in. So she was just wondering, and we were kind of wondering how we can take care of that, so that way the residents can access it.
Well, the right guy's in the room. Talk to TJ and.
Yeah, we'll get the guys to look at it and do that up.
Okay.
Yeah, anything on the intersection at Hill and Washington? Yeah, have you gone up there? I mean, the traffic light just isn't, it's not functioning if you're,
We have
if
a
you're,
call to the contractor and
Okay.
we're waiting for them to come in. We've got a series of other, items for them to do when they get here, but it's just a matter of.
yeah, I mean, it's manageable. So if you're coming up Hill Street, so if you or I, Councilor Spalding, were going home and you come up Hill Street and you're approaching the intersection of Washington and Hill, 302 and Hill, if you're coming up from that direction, the light, for some reason, the sensor isn't triggering if you're coming up the hill. You literally have to wait, traffic stacks up, 6, 7, 8 cars deep. And if someone is coming down Hill Street on the other side of the intersection, they'll trigger it for you. And then the light turns green, you can go. So I've just gotten used to taking a right-hand turn onto Washington, going up to Charles and banging a left. It's easier, but little public service announcement, that intersection is a little challenged right now. Anything else, folks? Okay, thank you very much. We will move on. It is 6:18. We have under 8A, we have a public hearing for the CDBG-DR applications warned for 6:15. Mr. Manager, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Council, we're back to this step required by the application for round 2 submission. As you recall, when we did a round 1 submission, we had a hearing for before the application was submitted, and then the council voted on the resolutions to authorize basically us to make those submissions. This time around, the round 2 is constrained to housing projects only, so we have only 2 applications that we are preparing and asking for your approval to submit. One is, they're both related to the North End Gateway project. We've split up the projects. One is only the elevations and buyouts, and the other one is the acquisitions. And as you know, in terms of information for those who are interested in the applications, the reason we did that is because the feedback we got back from ACCD after the first round was that the acquisitions were a little bit more tenuous in terms of their ability to get funded. And so not wanting to roll the dice, not wanting to gamble with what we heard were compelling and competitive applications for elevations and buyouts, we decided to split them up. We know that ACCD has the ability to partially fund applications. I think correctly, the council thought it wasn't worth risking that. And so we're going to be submitting this as 2 separate distinct projects. And I think that gives them, certainly gives the elevations and buyouts a better chance on their own, and it allows us to get, an independent sort of view on the acquisitions application. So in terms of, the content within the applications, the narrative will be much the same. The only thing that has really changed, as you may recall from our first round when we submitted this, there were 9 buyouts, 9 elevations, and 4 acquisitions. We are currently down, so we added 1 elevation, which was Ms. Macris, who you heard from. So we were initially, when we started working on round 2, looking at 9 buyouts, 10 elevations, and 4 acquisitions. We've since gotten information that I shared with you at the last meeting that for people who participate in the elevations and get funded, and if they choose to sell their property in the next 20 years, they would basically lose all the equity in their property, have risk losing most of the equity in their property. So because of that, we've lost 7 of the elevation applicants. 3 have committed to remaining. So right now, what we are working on at the staff level is a much narrower scope. So it's still 9 buyouts. All the buyout people came back. 3 elevations because 7 out of the 10 backed out, and then the 4 acquisition property owners are back as well. So, for the acquisitions and the buyouts, this resale provision doesn't really apply because they're getting bought out now. They won't own it anyway. But it was really on the elevations that we took that hit in terms of the reduction. So we are working very closely with those property owners. They've been receiving a bunch of information requests from me over the last week. The deadline for this application is February 27th, which is when I will be gone, but we are, Jim Levinsky is working with us again. He was our grant writer the first time. He did a terrific job. Janet is going to be sort of the point here in the city while I'm out. Jim's really doing the bulk of the work, and he's already done most of the narrative for the first round. And then Pat Moulton has been very helpful, and Josh Jerome as well. So the core team is remaining. By the time I leave, I expect to have much of the data gathering and documents that are required ready for the team and even uploaded. They will be really working on fine-tuning the narrative, and the application can be submitted in my absence, so there's no worry about that. So that's our process. We've checked the boxes in terms of the procedural steps. This is really the last one we have before we press send on the application, and we are eager and hopeful that we are successful this round. As I've mentioned to many of these property owners who I've had the chance to speak to a lot in the last couple of years, that hoping to call them with good news one of these days. I'm hoping that this is the time. They've gone through a lot, and hoping that this time we can when we get the notification, we can give them some positive news. And many of them want out, which is very understandable, and it'll be I think really positive for the city if we get these projects funded. They're very compelling.
Questions? Yes.
So as far as the elevation, it's not fair. Do we have any recourse to write up something how we would like to go about it, or are we taking a chance of losing everything? I mean, you get a buy elevation, you sell in 20 years, and you don't get squat. That's not right.
Well, yes. I mean, we, Nicholas and I, mostly I, are continuing to have conversations with the administration. And I've presented them with a number of alternatives. One is a straight up, the property's worth $150,000. ACCD is putting in $300,000. As far as I'm concerned, it should be, 1/3, 2/3. And I think that would be understandable to anyone. Or we could try a method where we take that same formula, but then we appraise the property immediately after the property is completed. And, and again, there could be an adjustment there. So they haven't been unreceptive to the conversation. And I think they understand that, who in their right mind would risk, and especially if someone has a mortgage, who in their right mind would risk all of their equity to do that? Wouldn't it be easier to just save yourself the heartache and walk away now? And, and so those conversations have been productive. They've been well received. They understand. And I remain hopeful that they'll make adjustments to the program, because the one thing that I've stressed is as we submit the elevation grant, if all of a sudden we had 10 people who turned around and said, no, I do want to apply, I want to make sure that we have that capacity. And and I wouldn't blame them, they may say, okay, we'll give you that, but we're going to give you that for 90 days. So if you've got any applications where folks backed away because they didn't like our formula and now we've revised the formula and they want to sit back at the table, that's great, but they've got 90 days to do it. And I think, that's fair. We want to build housing. Yes, Councilor.
Did we get any answers on whether this is a state restriction or a federal restriction?
It's a federal restriction, but in terms of how they implement the restriction, there is a great deal of flexibility. And I think they've taken, with all due respect, I appreciate our partners at ACCD. I think they took a position that is the worst possible position for folks who are suffering. And I've done it myself. I've made, I've come up with formulas myself and then looked back on it after a period of time and said, what was I thinking? So at least the conversations have been well received.
Question. Are we doing something to try to change this, prevent
Yes.
this? Because again, not to beat a dead horse, but the north end has been suffering. We really haven't gotten jack, and now they want to give us an elevation, but you're not going to get any money 20 years down. I mean, it's just but thank you. As long as we're doing something to try to.
We're continuing to have those conversations, and the one thing that I wanted to be assured is that the submission of this grant was not necessarily bound by that. In other words, they can revisit that, and the answer is they can. That was just their initial read. Yes.
Oh, no, I've lost it. I'm sorry. The manager.
Sorry.
It'll come to me in a second.
I'll just say that it is really important that we know what rules they'll be applying to, because the thing is that CDBGDR is a grant through the city, right? So if this were to come to fruition and somebody were to sell their house within 20 years and the current rules were applied, CDBGDR, ACCD is not going to go knock on the residence home in the north end. They're going to come to our doorstep and say, you owe $300,000 from this grant, right? And we couldn't write one of those checks today. We certainly couldn't write 7 of them. And so it's really, that's what, it's critical. It's not just.
It's advantageous so they're educated on it.
And so it's not just a risk to the homeowner rolling the dice and making a 20-year commitment, but it's also, what kind of instrument, and that's what I've talked to the city attorney about, is what kind of instrument protects, the city council and the city in the future from having to make these payments, right? Because they will be coming to us for the money, not to the homeowners.
I remembered.
Oh.
And this may not be information that we have to hand, but I'm curious if there are any other circumstances across the other CDBG grants that were awarded in which a program income restriction like this has been applied. I don't recall seeing any other grants or potential grants for elevation, but I know that there were other grants where they were certainly investing in things and improving buildings and housing. So I'm just curious, like, how are the rules being applied to different projects?
Honestly, I haven't, I've been so busy I haven't even asked for or looked at any of the other grants. So, other people in other communities might be having this same conversation, saying, hey, it doesn't work. I've been, more focusing on the issue that the manager just described, and also running through a series of hypotheticals. Like I said before, if you have a mortgage, well, a bank is not going to subordinate to the state of Vermont. They're just not. Banks have duties to stockholders, period. Banks don't have a heart. They don't have a conscience. They don't have a soul. They answer to stockholders. And that's the way it should be. That's their business model. So, and I don't care, Community National Bank, Northfield Savings Bank, those are our tried and true community banks, and they do so much for Central Vermont, but they're not going to say to their board of directors, oh, we're going to subordinate to a $300,000 grant. They'd get fired. So those are the, we've been trying to apply those, I've been trying to apply those real life scenarios in the conversations that I've been having. And, I want to see something for the North End come out of this, even if it's, I believe in the elevations. I think that's that's a great start for people who are there, for people who are struggling. And I believe in the buyouts. I believe in that green space. I think if we can start to transform the way the North End looks, with all due respect to the folks who live there, it's not very pretty right now. And if we could start to make it look better, you would attract development. But you're not going to attract development, in my opinion, in the state that the North End is in today. You're just not. So does anyone else wish to comment, or do you have a question regarding the public hearing on the CDBG DR grants as described? If not, I will declare the hearing closed, and I will move on to Resolution 2026-01. This is the North End Gateway Project Elevation and Buyout CDBG DR application approval. Motion would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, council? And I'm sorry, a copy of the resolution was in your packet. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, thank you very much. Council will move to Resolution 2026-02. Again, this is the North End Gateway Project. This is the acquisitions CDBG DR application approval. A motion would be in order.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Take your pick.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Is there any discussion, council, or questions, or anyone, any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. We will move on. Council will move on to volunteer appointments. This is the Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion. Do I see Autumn? Is Autumn?
I don't see Aurora.
Are we, Aurora, I'm sorry.
And this time I did
First two letters.
contact her.
Okay.
So I emailed her at the beginning of the meeting, but I haven't heard back.
Okay, well, things happen.
Yep.
Let's, council, why don't we try to get this one on the agenda one more time at our next meeting, if that's okay? Is everyone all right with that? No, because, things happen and, people get busy. But Alex is here. Alex, come on up. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Well, thank you for being here. I know you, but if you'd like to introduce yourself to the council and
I know a little bit everybody,
talk a little bit about your interest in the Police Advisory Committee?
Sure. So my name is Alexandra Pastor, and Counselor Guston actually approached me and wondered if I would be interested in joining the PAC. So I said, yes, wonderful. I would like to fill out an application. So I'm here tonight. You probably want to know why I'm interested. Among other things, I'm a Barre City resident, lived here since '86. I own property in Barre City. I went to school here. I also did my master's here in Vermont, so I really feel like I have a lot of investment in my community. I'm community-focused in general, so I've been working with my neighborhood, as several counselors know, on some issues that we've had, some criminal activity. So the police piece is very near and dear to my heart, and I see that there's opportunity for communication between the police department and the community. In speaking to my neighbors, I feel like a lot of us felt disempowered. So I feel like there's there's a lot of space there for building relationship between the two. And I didn't know a lot about the police department and the individuals who work there until I started being in somewhat regular communication with them over the last 6 months. And they're courteous, and they're positive, and they're supportive, and not always the impression that one would have maybe of a police department. And I think if more people knew that, we could have a very united community. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
And have you had the opportunity to attend? I know they don't meet all that often, but have
I
you?
think they're meeting every 3 months
Yeah.
now.
So you probably haven't
no.
had an opportunity to attend a meeting, but have you spoken to any of the members? And
So I've spoken, well, briefly to Amanda, but
Sure.
I have spoken with Stephen. So we spoke a little bit about the committee and how they've done all the hard work of working through the policies at the police department. So now they're ready for a next phase. So I'm sort of coming in a transition period. But yeah, he was very enthusiastic, and it was nice to get his take on it. He learned a lot, and that's what I'm hoping also, is to continue to learn more about the needs of the community and how the police department works.
And I asked this question of everyone, and I already know the answer. You've considered the time, the time requirement to serve on the committee and to do the job well, and you're prepared to make that commitment.
Absolutely.
And you were correct, Alex, in your write-up here. You're a very thoughtful person. We don't always see eye to eye on everything.
That's okay.
Sometimes you get a
That's
little
a good
worked up
thing.
when it comes to streets. Sometimes you get a little worked up with me. Yeah, you. But no, every conversation that I have with you, you're correct.
Brian and I are friends.
You're thoughtful. You ask fair questions. Sometimes you ask them in a different tone of voice, but they're always fair, and you're always thoughtful in every conversation, and I've had a lot of them over the years. Every conversation I've ever had with you, I come away from that conversation smiling and thinking that you are an asset to Barre City, and I'm thrilled to have you live here. So thank you for that. So you have my unqualified endorsement. Council, any questions for Alex? Yes.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Are you familiar with Officer McGowan situation?
A little bit, yeah.
So let's just say,
Got to rule you out of order, Counselor.
I'm sorry?
Got to rule you out of order. I apologize. I do. But the committee has absolutely zero jurisdiction over that.
But she has an opinion on it.
Okay, but I just want to make it clear the committee has.
All I want to
Not
know
an
is
informed one.
all I want to know is if someone was guilty, but then they went through a process and it was overturned 18-0, would you move on with this person like, okay, then, or would you still harbor that you thought it was wrong?
I guess it depends on who I am in that position. Honestly, I don't have any facts of the case.
Okay.
But I do know it was very felt in the community. On Facebook, I see support in both directions. Listen, like I said, I don't have the details, but I think these are difficult decisions for a city to make.
Totally.
And it's not as cut and dry as things can seem. And I follow resident chat a lot, 802 Scoop a lot, because I love to see what people are saying in the community. You can get a sense of like a pulse of where everything is. So I can't express myself and I'm being sincere here. I'm not trying to walk the middle line.
I respect that totally, and I
Yeah,
thank you for
And
that.
that's okay, because as a committee
But I know
member,
these
you would have
things are
zero
difficult.
jurisdiction over that
Yeah,
matter.
well, perfect.
But you would be asked your opinion because you're on a committee for the police department, so you would be you would
I
have
would
an
be in that
opinion.
position.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I will learn
And I
when
do,
I'm here.
and we can end there. I appreciate your honesty.
No, well, I appreciate the question, so I'm sure we'll have this conversation again, maybe not about McGowan, though.
Any other questions, council? Yes.
Just not a question, just a comment. Thank you so much for saying yes, and I wholeheartedly echo what the mayor had said, that I found you to be deeply fair-minded and thoughtful and passionate and
thank you so
persistent.
much.
So we need exactly that serving.
I really
I'll
care.
play you some of the phone calls I get at my house. Awesome. Some of them are really awesome. Some people get so worked up, they forget to give me their name, where they live, or their callback number, and I'm just like, okay.
That could be me. You know what, so just a side note, I work at the state. I work for Act 250. Act 250 is sort of like one of those departments that people are often not happy with, and I enjoy actually receiving phone calls from angry people. I don't get them very often, but sometimes I work with people who are frustrated because I love to open the door for them and help solve or help find a middle ground. And I think that is extremely challenging. And in general, anytime you read the news, whether it's local news, et cetera, it's very divided. And I just would love to see people come, I'm not trying to be kumbaya, but I would just like to see people come together and just try to solution together. So, and honestly, whether it's you people as in local, state, or federal government, you know, I like to close that gap too, because I'm a taxpayer too. So I feel like I can put myself in their shoes. So I'm okay if they're angry.
Thank you. Motion would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. It's moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, I'd say welcome aboard, but you've been aboard for years. So all good.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate you having you. Okay, council, we will move on. So we'll just put the other appointment off for a week, or till the next council meeting. Like I said, so council, we'll move on to the fiscal year 27 budget, DPW, and survey results.
Thank you, Mayor, and welcome back to Christina and Brian Baker here for the Public Works departmental review. So tonight, covering Public Works is a big department. Within that department, we're really talking tonight about streets, engineering, streets, lights, traffic signals, maintenance. We're not reviewing tonight Water Enterprise Fund, which it's a separate fund. It funds the water treatment plant and the distribution. And we're not reviewing the Wastewater Enterprise Fund, which is the wastewater treatment plant and the collection system. So the budget we're working on now is general fund funded, which means, as I mentioned, streets, engineering, streetlights, traffic signals, maintenance. We do talk about the other two funds later in the year when we set the rates, which is in August typically. So I didn't want you to think if we didn't cover it or if I answered in that way, I wanted you to know why, that we're really talking what we're putting before the voters in May covers those three that I mentioned. This is just the visual and org chart of Public Works. Really, what we're looking at tonight is those mostly blue boxes with some of the cross-hatched blue boxes. So for example, the water department may sometimes work on helping the streets department on a project if there's something, they may help with paving prep, for example. So there is a little bit of overlap, but as I mentioned, primarily what we're really talking about is that streets side, the engineering side, and then we also have a mechanic who's funded on the general fund side. This department does a lot. They have 47.5 miles of city streets to maintain and plow, which keeps them very, very busy. On top of that, 25 miles of sidewalk to maintain and plow, and approximately 1,200 drainage structures in the city. So those things we interact, all of us, every day with. We all drove here. If you're walking anywhere on Main Street, you're interacting with something they do, and the drainage structure is obviously spread throughout the city. So this department touches everybody's daily life. There may be times, there may be years you don't interact with the police department. Not so with streets, right? This is we're dealing with it. Residents are dealing with it one way or the other every day. They were very busy in 2026. just a ton of paving. I'm going to forget some, Berlin, Prospect, Allen. Merchants Row I think was done under last year's
Right, it was
project, but it
done
was done
in
this
spring.
year,
Yeah,
but it was done in the
spring of
calendar
last
year.
year's
Yeah.
paving budget.
But they were very, very, very aggressive paving project this year, which I know hit a lot of streets that most of us heard about. I know Prospect in particular. My call volume's gone down significantly just for paving. That one was a popular one to hear about. And they're very busy with their usual construction season projects. These crews work very hard. They work hard year-round, but from spring and summer and fall, they're taking advantage of the short construction season here in Vermont to do a lot of outdoor work. They're doing sidewalks, basins, guardrails, mowing, you name it, they're working on it. This is the budget changes for this department on the general fund side. Again, I'm giving you the budget section, so when you go to the line by line, you can see exactly which sections we're discussing. So on the street lighting side, we don't typically make a lot of changes on this. This is pretty standard and stays pretty consistent. Same things with the traffic signals. I will mention, it came up earlier today, the traffic signals I know is a source of frustration for people and it is for us. As Brian mentioned, there's one contractor who does this work in the region. We are at their whim in terms of when they can get here. We have an accumulation of projects for them to do when they get here. And so I know that it's frustrating for people. We feel it too, because these things just pile up. One example is we were not allowed, or we weren't able to hire someone to put the security cameras on the street lights, the ones that were going to go on right out here and on Maple.
The Green Mountain Power poles were not allowed to.
Oh, no, I thought the traffic signal, we couldn't put them on the traffic signals.
No.
The ones out here. 'cause
No, we're waiting for.
We're waiting for them, yeah.
To get it on their schedule.
Exactly. We weren't able to contract out for it. They have to do it because of the complexity of the wiring and everything that goes into it. So we're waiting to get those up until just to give you a sense, right? And that's been since this summer, right? So this is
We met in August, September timeframe.
Yeah. So anyway, this is a source of ongoing frustration. We're at their mercy. And then the engineering side, we have approximately 7.24% increase. And then the streets department side, we're going from about 1.8 million to just over 2 million, which is about an 11.25% increase. Overall, the percent change in this department is a shade under 10 at 9.80. Most of this, again, driven by personnel costs. We are also making, there are other significant cost drivers here. Also, we're spending more on salt, and so that had to be reflected in this budget. So that was an increase of $25,000. We have put more money in this budget after last year. We had a real difficult season with the winter pothole repair. We've added more funding this year to be able to stay on top of that a little bit better. We did find some savings to offset some of these increases, and that was about just under $12,000 that we took some relatively modest savings that we assumed from moving into the new garage, primarily with fuel oil and buildings and ground maintenance. So that's the summary for that department. Brian's here certainly to answer questions specifically. I do want to give you an update of where the overall picture stands after this departmental review. So at the total general fund budget is now at 15.8 million. As you can see, just 3,700 from last week's. We were making some minor tweaks in the last week. The 26 approved was 14.7 million. And so we are at a 7.4% increase in year-to-year expenses. And then we're at a 6.66 increase in the amount to be raised by taxes, which is actually down from last week, and I'll explain that. Our increases are slightly up again. That was just a technical adjustment on the 3,700, so that we went up just a small tick there. But we realized that the Washington County taxes were being double counted. They were basically we had a separate line for it on the revenue side, and we also had a line on the expense side, but we were essentially counting the expense as having to be raised twice. And so we got rid of that double counting, and that's why, even though the expenses went up slightly from the last budget briefing to this week, when we accounted for the double counting of that amount, which is $43,000, it sent the tax rate down. So those are the things we love. Those are double countings in that regard are good. We like it when things move that way. And so I just wanted to explain that, because it's counterintuitive that it moved in that direction. So again, and that blue box at the bottom says, this is still sort of an all-in budget, right? This funds the council's priorities that we heard about in terms of recreation and the bees. It funds Tessa's position, which the mayor, we talked about earlier, we're hoping to get funded by the state. It funds the request from the library, BADC, and the partnership. So it does the things that we've heard people want this budget to do. We're still not displaying, we weren't panicked last week, we're certainly not panicked this week. We still have ways to get to 5%. One of the fastest ways to 5% is to get that state funding for the Housing and Homelessness Liaison position. That would drop us down to 5.84. And then, as I've mentioned last week, we're currently assuming about $100,000 of a fund balance allocation to help reduce the tax rate. We are planning to come back to you as soon as I'm back in March, and we continue these discussions with some options for what the fund balance will look like and how much more we could tap into it. But at this point, an additional $100,000 of fund balance would get us right to that 5% target. These are very manageable things, and we can do it, right? So that's why we are not showing you any panic at this point. We're in relatively good shape, and we have time to get it right and get it where people want it to be. Now, there are policy questions that are embedded in this budget for the city council, and those are things that are assumed in our numbers as well. And so we don't necessarily need answers tonight, but it would be helpful, I think, in the 4 weeks that we have until our next budget meeting for us to brainstorm if we need to be looking at other options, right? So one of the things we mentioned at our first review when we talked about revenue is that we are proposing an increase of the rental registry from $60 per unit to $100 per unit. That generates $82,000 in revenue. Right now, that is assumed in these numbers, right? So if that's a direction the council is not comfortable going in, that plays in, right? We have to take that out or reduce it, and that means either more fund balance, more savings, right? That's an $82,000 number that we would have to replace one way or the other. The budget, I sent you the full line by line this week because we've now seen every department. So I don't expect you to look, you can look at it line by line, but I do definitely want to point out that we are proposing a fairly significant reduction to Green Mountain Transit allocation by almost $26,000 from about $38,000 to $12,500. This represents, of GMT's total revenues, it's a drop in the bucket, but it's also 5% of their local operating assistance, right? So I'm respectful of that both ways, that overall, are they going to feel $26,000? They're a $23 million operation. Maybe, maybe not. From the local assistance side, you definitely feel 5%, right? So I acknowledge that it's a tough one. I have talked to GMT about this. They know that we're proposing this reduction. They have asked to come talk to you on March 17th at the next meeting. So I don't think you need to, again, excuse me, you should wait to hear from them before you certainly formulate your own thoughts, but they want to come talk to you about that as well. I will say that we did ask for the Washington County allocations. They're a little bit all over the board. Montpelier's is 30-some thousand. Waterbury's 2,000. So I just want to say we're not doing something crazy here, right? Like there's some rationale as well. We're still contributing more than Waterbury. That said, they want to come talk to you, so I don't think you need to make decisions tonight. I would hear them out. Finally,
If they could, if they could brief, like, if they could send us a written brief
yes,
prior to the meeting,
I
that
will
would
ask them to
be,
do that.
that would be really helpful. I mean, I know that caught my eye.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we've all read about the struggles, we've heard about the struggles, we've had representatives from Green Mountain Transit in a number of times to talk to us about, reductions in the service and how they're struggling. And now to top everything else off, in the northern part of the state, every single one of their electric buses is parked because their batteries are recalled, but they can't get replacements. So, they're struggling, they provide a valuable service, and what I'm not necessarily interested in is kicking somebody when they're down. So, not faulting the manager, it's his job to present a budget to the council that hits the numbers, but this one, I'm going to wait, and even on the 82,000 revenue from the increase of the rental registry, we'll have a lively meeting on the 17th.
It will.
No, and when I say lively, there'll be a lot of respectful discussion, and we'll have some decisions to make. My concerns about, when we have roughly 50% of our properties here in Barre where people live are rental properties. So we have a significant, in terms of percentage, a significant number of renters. And it's not lost on me that when property taxes go up, and I don't fault landlords for doing this one little bit, I would do the same thing, I do the same thing. When property taxes go up, rent goes up. When utilities go up, rent goes up. And when the rental registry fee goes up, rent goes up. And so my concern, and I want to have a good conversation about, okay, are we ultimately putting this $82,000 increase on the folks who can least afford it? And maybe, I'm not saying no increase, I'm not saying no to an increase, but is there perhaps some common ground here? And I haven't had a lot of discussion with folks about that, but I intend to, the folks at Barre Housing Authority, the folks at Downstreet, the folks at Capstone, and just say, well, what do you all think? Yes?
I have briefly a response to that, which is, my quick math says that would be an additional $3 per month per rental unit, so that would seem not in good faith to pass along to a renter.
It would not be in good faith?
At just $3 a month, I feel like that could be absorbed without
$3 a month.
too much difficulty.
Year after year after year is how people go bankrupt. And that is generally what happens.
The next is a brief question for the manager, which is, I'm curious how you arrived at that number of reduction and sort of what made you sort of propose that?
we have very few lines that are discretionary. So that's one place we can go, right? And so that is one reason that's an area we can make adjustment. We knew that our allocation was, that there was a difference in allocations amongst communities. And so that was one other rationale in terms, I think our allocation was on par with what Montpelier is paying, but then again, the Waterbury number is quite different. And so that was another rationale of, are we maybe overpaying, or are there other ways to get other communities to sort of contribute more as well? So there wasn't a specific math to it. We were trying to get it down to what we thought might be a more sustainable number, which is somewhere between two numbers that we were familiar with. So no specific rationale other than those two general thoughts. Yep.
Waterbury is at $2,000. Where'd they come up with that number?
And
Throw 'em a bone.
It could be, and that's why I think I spoke with Christian Meyer, who's chair of the CVRPC and our Washington County representative, about this. And I'm also very, very open to the fact that they may show up on the 17th and tell us there's a very good reason for that, or there's another contribution that Waterbury makes that we're not aware of, and that's why I think it's important to have them here. We can go only by the information that we can see, and like someone looking at our budget might draw faulty conclusions. We could have drawn a faulty conclusion, and if that's the case, I'm very, very open to hearing that and being corrected on it. But again, there could be other rationales that we're not familiar with.
Got it.
And then the last other policy question really doesn't have money associated with it now, but last year we eliminated what was, generally speaking, a very popular bulky waste event that actually Brian's staff operates. We cut it. When we had the budget congress, it's an event that we know residents really like. Carol was actually the ID checker last year, so she could probably tell you the number of people that, a lot of people. It was a constant stream. I think Councilor Bergeron, remember, you called me about that pile. We had an extra pile of garbage because of how many people showed up. So we know it's popular. Again, nothing necessarily to decide tonight. We can craft something, and it even can be outside of the budget. But if the council is interested in a cost-neutral event, that's something that we can try to put together. The cost for the city is essentially overtime for public works, and then hauling, rental of bins and hauling away. And so I know Barrytown does an event, they charge people, and we would try to do something similar. We could try to figure out a way to have differential payment for city residents versus non-city residents. I still think we need to charge both ways because, unfortunately, what's intended to be sort of a spring cleaning event turns out to a landlord's cleaning out their property event, and we get trailers full of stuff when really the idea is to get sort of the back of a pickup full of stuff. And so we don't want it to be abused in that way, but we do know that, people love this event and they really enjoyed it. And if we can find a way to do it that's cost neutral, where there's a small fee for city residents and anyone else is paying a little bit more, I think that's something on the staff level we're happy to provide because we know how much people enjoy it. So we would propose doing it cost neutral. I think it became a little bit too much of a headache and too much of an easy thing to abuse to do it for free.
Councilor Ruthier, you had a question earlier.
Yes, I have a couple of questions.
Councilor Spalding, you had your hand up as well.
Employees this year versus last year, how many do you have this year versus last year?
Currently, right now, we have 3 openings in the street department.
So you're 3 less than last year?
No, I think we've always had, we've been down at least 1 in the street department, so at all times, but we have 3 openings right now.
Drainage structures, 1,200, are they, during the summer, what percentage are they clean? I mean, isn't that one of the biggest reasons for the flooding? The drainage structures get clogged from underneath?
I don't think that's the biggest. What happened on the downtown here is the culverts the underground river plugged, and that's what flooded the downtown area.
So you do consistently look at
we try to have someone out there cleaning as much as we
them.
can, but it's, with a limited staff, you can only do so much, but we are planning on, trying to have a, 2-person crew out there most of the summer if we can swing it.
My last question, are we ever going to budget in West Patterson Street? Spalding High School has a fire or something scary, just one way in, one way out right now. How can we ever budget that in?
I think when we got preliminary engineering on that was well above a 6-figure project, and the more, I would say mid 6 figures minimum.
Yeah, we had estimates somewhere between $250,000 to $500,000 for that one section of street.
And I think that to sink that kind of money into that short of a stretch of road, where they can go down Circle Street. I know they can get out down that way and down Air Street. It doesn't seem to us on the staff level that if you gave us $250,000 to do something with, that would be, I don't think we'd get to that in the next 10 years, right? There's just too much to do.
A lot more people don't bring that up, or do they? No?
We haven't,
I miss
they
it.
did after the,
Every day.
No, I do, but I'm
just if it's
sensitive to the
students.
argument that when you look at some of the side streets, some of the streets that people are traveling on, and you look at their condition, I get it. And I really miss it. And I doubly miss it because the South Main, Air Street, Hill Street intersection, that stoplight
Unreal.
is responsible for global warming. I've said it before and I'll say it again. That intersection just makes no sense. And you know, it's all time now. It used to run, there used to be sensors in the road. Now the sensors, they smartened up and they put the sensors actually on the traffic lights.
You get two
That
cars and it
particular
turns.
light, the sensors are actually in the road and they failed years ago. So you just rely on the timing and, you know,
We have
it's,
had that retimed and programmed, do a traffic study to see what it should be, and I don't think it pleases anybody.
yeah. Well, and sometimes it just doesn't go. I mean, literally, you know,
All of our
it gets
traffic
stuck in a
lights
loop
are,
and it just.
Scheduled for replacement, so that's, if you look at that budget, that's where, $20,000 a piece is for traffic lights. And I think we are up to 8 of them now, so we're trying to spread those out over the next couple of years to get a new one. But again, waiting on that one contractor to do it, they're scheduled to do one per year for us.
Right. Unreal. Yeah, and that's all they're doing. But I hear you. I miss it.
Like, I'm sorry.
I miss it a ton. Yes.
I'm so sorry. Like just the light, the box with the 3 lights, that's $20,000?
It's the system, the control system. There's a pedestal that sits out there and the series of lights.
Okay, so like the entire intersection's
Yes,
worth of,
yes.
thank you, that makes me feel better.
Yeah. Councilor Spalding, you had a
Yeah,
question earlier.
I had a question about the Green Mountain Transit. If we could get them to send us something, but also, because I don't know enough about how they service our city. I do know that what I heard was that they were reducing routes, and that was a really big deal to people. If we gave them the full amount, would they add those routes back in? I'd be fine with that. I mean, if we're gonna pay more money and they're gonna treat us like we are paying more money, that would be, I would consider that. But I also think that if there are other communities who are paying less and getting the same level of service, that's not equitable. So that's what I'm curious about.
But isn't
and
that the
I-
same with the library? Berlin and Orange aren't paying what we're
But
paying.
they pay non-resident
Yeah, but it's
fees.
been that way for 25 years.
Well, they pay
Yes,
non-resident
I mean, they
fees.
don't make, let's get a lick to see how much money comes in from non-residents.
Councilor Bergeron.
We could ask it. Wait, 1 second though. I was gonna say to you, every time I go out and talk to people, they always ask me, when is West Patterson opening again?
Oh.
Every single time. And I tell them not to hold their breath, so.
Well, same on top of Camp Street. That's a joke too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
come
that's
on.
not us,
That-
though.
I know, it's a major corridor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
so just back to the bulky waste event. I think when we first tried that, didn't we have a fee schedule? Like the first time we did it, so much for a car, another price for a truck, and then a price for a truck or a car pulling a trailer.
I think there was, but I wasn't involved with any of the collections.
Yeah. And I think if we did that, they're still going to come. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh,
We
yeah.
saw how
Definitely.
much stuff was there last year.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's still going to be less than they'd be paying a hauler to come to their property and take it away. So,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we were pretty reasonable. I mean, we were doing a pickup truck for like $20 or something like
it
that.
was 15, 20, and then 25.
Yeah, I mean, it was reason, and we wanted it to be reasonable because so many people were clearing up flood debris. They had furnishings, so we wanted to make it that way. No, I'm all over that. I think if we could bring back the bulky waste event and charge folks, that could be great. And we're a small community. I mean, do we have to charge everybody? No, not necessarily. If someone shows up and they really can't afford it, Carol can waive the fees, can't you, Carol?
A few extra dollars in my pocket.
Hey, yeah, I mean, no, but we try to work with people and, so at the same time, we complain when there are tires and other things outside somebody's property. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to say, well, we're giving you an opportunity. So, man, if we could do it, yeah, and I realize it's all overtime, but, if we could do a couple of them, do one maybe in the spring and one before the winter, that would be awesome. Council could run it. Well, would that be a union violation?
Probably.
Not if Carol was
I bet you it would be.
Well, we could rent a dumpster ourselves and do our own
In a room.
non-city sponsored bulky waste event.
I'd be down for that.
Yes.
2 things on the bulky waste event. Councilor Bergeron and I held a budget conversation with some of our Ward 2 residents last week, and that
All
this,
two of them.
well, it was a good conversation. And
okay.
also a very snowy day. But they were all in favor of, we actually posed this question.
Oh, good.
And they were wholly in favor of cost neutral. And briefly on the question of staff time and overtime, I would absolutely echo that I would want to be sensitive to the cost of the event and not make money on it. But if the cost, as you set the fees, could also take some of that staff time and staff overtime cost into consideration,
Right.
that would help us recoup some of that.
Yep, absolutely.
And, and honestly, in the spirit of helping, not trying to take work away from anyone, our folks at Public Works, we looked at, like you talked earlier about structures. So imagine, by the time you pull a truck up, you need a vac truck. By the time you pull a truck up, you got to have a CDL driver, pull the cover off, vacuum the thing out. It's probably, 2 hours a structure to really do a good job? There's 1,200 of them. That's 2,400 hours. That's 2 people cleaning those, doing nothing but cleaning those free. I mean, that's their challenge at Public Works. So if there was any way that the union would allow, usually you do it on a Saturday. Who wants to be standing by a dumpster on a Saturday? City Council, we might. No, so maybe if they had a couple of DPW guys there and a few council members wanted to volunteer, community members, maybe you could run that by them and, they'd be okay with that. So
I think most of the-
if it's an event they'd rather really not do,
The DPW guys are there to run the loaders.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
actually move the bulk of it. So I'm not sure if any of you have loader experience, but,
own one,
Oh, but I can pick up heavy things. So,
and a backhoe. I can always bury the garbage if you want, just point out the spot. No, but if they, we're just trying to figure out a way to bring more services to city residents and, but also not tax the staff because I know how busy they are. So any other questions on the Budget Council? So thank you for sending us the complete budget. Carol, do we have or Christina, do we have the current grand list? Current grand list, and can I get that number from you?
And it's gonna be useless, because
I know it's going to be useless, but people are going to ask, and I want to be in a position to answer the question and say, okay, if your assessment stays the same as it was this year, and it won't, this is what would happen, this is what your taxes would be. But people are going to ask a question, and even though, like I said, with a ton of caution, I'll say, this is kind of a useless exercise, but I'll give it to you anyway because you asked for it.
it's the reason that we really are focusing on the percent difference of the amount to be raised by taxes, because that's the part of the formula that will be the same. The grand list will change,
Right.
which will ultimately change the tax rate, but the amount to be raised by taxes, that's the best way to see what the real difference is.
Yeah, I agree.
I can send you the number. It's gonna be useless, but I can send it to you.
90% of the stuff I do is useless. But it's
I
all
have
good.
one more question.
Yes.
Do you burn your waste oil, or do you use a waste oil furnace, or no?
no, we don't.
No. What do you do with your waste oil?
I believe they.
Safety clean?
Some of it goes to safety clean, but we have a couple,
Ben,
garages that come pick it up to do that.
I'll be down. We're lonely, sure. I mean, we usually have more waste oil than what to do with, but, okay, thank you.
So, any last parting thoughts, Nicholas?
No, we'll just move right to the budget survey.
Okay,
if that's
perfect.
good. You good? Everyone good with Christina and Brian?
Yeah, Brian,
you both.
Christina, thank you. Have a
you.
nice evening.
So thank you, council. The other piece of the budget discussion for tonight is the results of the budget survey. And so I'll just start running through them. They were in the packet. I think
They
the
were.
responses, and then you had the written comments as well. So just on the demographics for the first couple slides of who we're hearing from, So we had, again, similar to last year, vast majority of the people who responded were residents, about 84%. Of the remaining 16%, about 8% identified as people who work in Barre, 3% identified as people who operate a business here in the city, and then 5% live nearby and/or used city services. Of the city residents, we had just about half of the respondents were from Ward 1, and next highest was Ward 3 with 32%, and Ward 2, gotta bring those numbers up, 20%.
How does that work out with our population, Carol? If anybody knows the answer to that question, it's going to be you.
Yeah, the last time we looked at the numbers was the last reapportionment.
Yep.
So a couple of years ago, and it's surprising how close the three wards are with regards to numbers.
So it's kind of a third,
Yeah, it
sort of,
really is.
if you look around the city, so.
And this was very similar to last year. Last year we had, again, Ward 1 was about half and similar split. So this stayed pretty consistent from year to year. This was a little bit different in terms of the age of the respondents. Most of the respondents just, but very small margin, 51% were under 50, 49% were 50 and over. That was quite different from last year, where 57% of the respondents were 50 and over. So that was one noticeable change in terms of what we got back this year. Most everyone who many of the people who responded have lived here for more than 10 years. So these are longtime residents who are primarily tuning in to do this survey. And this also was very similar to last year's results. Not totally surprising on this one. 91% of the respondents own a home here. And this is only counting the resident responses. Very few renters, just 8%, and one person identified as being unhoused or housing uncertain. And just the vast majority were either retired or employed individuals who responded. So now getting into that was sort of who we're hearing from, and now here's what they said. We got relatively high marks from respondents for the quantity and quality of communications. So you can see here, the first goes from excellent, good, needs improvement, and you can see that I did split these up. The blue bars is the quantity of communication, and the gold bar is the quality of communication. So this was, the one interesting thing I found here was that everyone who said the quantity of communication was a city resident. So either, a lot of things might explain that, primarily that non-city residents don't need to hear much from us, but I thought that was an interesting outcome of this particular question.
Remember where you were last year, offhand?
No, I would have to check this one. I don't think it was this high.
And I know you,
Yeah.
I know the staff, you and the staff have put a lot of effort
Yeah.
into regroup and
Yep.
improving the quality and the quantity of the communication. So I'll look at last year.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mayor. I think it was okay, but it wasn't quite this high.
Yeah, so good for you.
And then in terms of services, about 60% of respondents rated city services as excellent or good. So you have excellent on the left there, and good in the middle, and needs improvement on the far right. I did split this one up, residents versus all respondents. So you can see that there's not too much of a change one way or the other in terms of, I think it's sometimes helpful to see if we're getting different messages from the people who live here and vote here versus not. But I think for the most part, you can tell that there's not a lot of difference between the people who live here and don't, which I think also positive.
Most governors would be happy with that approval rating.
Definitely.
Except for Vermont, who happens to be like way over 70, but.
And then the views of the department services and funding. So this gives a lot of information. This rates the service and departments are down the middle. And then on the left side of this screen, we have a heat map
you're
Oops,
blocking it
I
a
am
little
blocking
bit.
it. There it is. There we go. So on the left side of the slide, we have a heat map of whether respondents rated the service or amenity as excellent, good, or needs improvement. Generally speaking here, the greenish hues tend to be better numbers, right? So if you're the good, just about everyone is right down the middle, saying that things are good. A couple outliers there that you can see. There's, for example, and I don't think any of these are really surprising. If we look at needs improvement for capital improvement projects, public works upgrades, down towards the bottom, 104 people said that was the case. I think we all know that, right? Like we drive our streets, we know that. That's not a surprise. And then the right side, we asked respondents to also tell us about the same amenities, whether the funding for these services or amenities should be increased, maintained, or decreased. And again, these are, the heat map here again is saying that the greenish hues tend to be more positive. So you can see, again, most people are right down the middle, which is pretty consistent with what they said about city services. They're happy with them. They could be better, but they're also happy with them. Couple outliers. There's a couple outliers you can see there. For example, fewer number of people wanted to increase things like the zoning, permitting, planning, clerk's office, right? I don't think, if city manager was on there, they'd probably be red too. I don't think Cheryl and I take offense to that. There's, we don't provide, well, at least I don't provide really direct services, you do. But that's, not surprising that maybe people don't really want to increase, maybe the permitting side of things, right? And then we also asked respondents about what we call these non-mandatory services. We gave them a list of these things of, that we have to fund or not fund. I think next year, as I thought about this when I was preparing this, adding Green Mountain Transit to this would be a good one as well, because that's obviously fits that category. Unfortunately, didn't do that this year, but I think moving forward would be a good one to have on here. And again, I think the theme is pretty consistent that, the blue bars at the bottom indicate people who wanted to increase funding for that service or amenity. The gold bars are people who wanted to continue to fund at the same levels. And then the grayish bars are at the very top, people who wanted to reduce that funding. I think for me, what's really informative is if you combine the blue and the gold bars, you don't see a lot of difference between all of these. Obviously, there's a little change. As I put these, I ranked these sorted them by the total between gold and blue, so you can sort of see a pattern. But generally speaking, even from the Aldrich Library to Economic Development BADC, from a numerical perspective, it's not a huge percentage difference, right? It's still people are. What I'm taking away is we're kind of hitting a sweet spot. I think we're getting things close to right for most people. There's not huge swings one way or the other. We try to find a couple of ways to ask people where we should spend more and if we should spend more. And this was one of the questions we asked is, should we spend more on these things? And I'll go through them. And the overwhelming response was infrastructure upgrades, which again, not surprising, right? That's the one that on the couple previous slides said needs the most improvement. Community recreation events and maintenance of city parks and facilities were kind of clustered together towards the bottom of that. Full-time grant writer and public safety response sort of clustered together right in the middle. And then off in its own stratosphere was infrastructure upgrades, right? Just not even close.
Surprise.
Yep. I think, and generally speaking, I think it's nice to get relatively consistent feedback. I think if we were getting sort of all over the place, it would be harder, but I think generally speaking, it was thematically consistent in terms of the responses. This was another way, again, trying to ask people in different ways, different manners about how to spend their money. And not surprising here, again, 85% of respondents rate street investments as very important, right? And so the question said, how do you rate these services and amenities? Blue bars are very important. do you rate it, is it very important? Is it neutral? That's the gold bar, and it's not important to me at all. That's that little grayish bar at the top. This one I sorted a little bit different because I thought the pattern was a little bit more interesting and clear by ranking with the highest respondents of very important to lowest, right? And so you see streets, again, got the highest votes for very important, followed by flood resiliency projects, not surprising. Sidewalks, which I would consider, again, part of our streets and infrastructure, and then so on down the road. I think the other takeaway here is, if you look at the, combination of the blue and the gold bars, again, most people, I think, we're finding a sweet spot. Very, very few people find the things that we fund not important to do them, right? There's no real big outliers in terms of people saying not to fund a certain thing. And then this was just another way of asking people about how we should spend their money. And this question was what they were willing to pay higher taxes for. And also not surprising, more paving and downtown foot patrols, which are currently, more paving is really more of a capital improvement thing, but I know we've talked about the increased allocation in terms of the separate article in the ballot. And then the foot patrols are funded in the budget right now. None of the above, I think really important in this answer, that some people, fair number of people said they weren't willing to pay higher taxes for any of these things. And I can't quite remember, I think that's 15% of those were non-city residents. So again, just sort of because they may pay taxes as business owners or property owners in the city, but just I thought it was relevant to know who was responding about taxes they may or may not be paying.
So what is that, give or take, on a percentage basis? I mean, it's not a surprising answer. It wouldn't surprise me to have 20% of the respondents say, I don't want higher taxes at all. So
I think
that 53 doesn't shock me. I think that's about a 20% response. And
yeah, pretty close. It's out of 191, so just about there.
Yeah. So having it come in third doesn't shock me, but roughly half of our residents say, look, do more paving and I'll pay higher taxes. I don't care.
Exactly.
And again, that doesn't surprise me.
Yep. And one thing, one reason I brought up the neutral, cost neutral bulky waste events, because you can see that there wasn't a lot of interest in paying more taxes for that. So that was one reason we are, like I said, we like that service. We like that event. I know residents really like it, but we saw this and we thought, let's find another way to do it. So that was it for the results. And this just going back to our timeline for the budget development process. We've done quite a bit already. We did our baseline. We've looked at all the budget departments individually. We had the budget survey results, which I had to delay a week, but we got that today. We have a little bit of a gap here until I'm back. But we had those, I think there's good policy questions up for discussion at the next meeting. And again, we are, based on the numbers I shared earlier tonight, we're not panicked. Don't think you should be panicked. I think we're going to work really hard to get some state funding to help bring down the tax rate. I also think, when I looked at the budget survey results, I thought that the budget we're working with now is pretty responsive to it. And so I think that's, does it completely align? Not necessarily, but I think overall, I think we're sort of hitting the right issues and right priorities. So that's that. Yeah, we'll be back in a couple weeks with some more information and some tougher decisions to make as well. But I think we have a good pathway to get to the target that was set, and I'm confident we can get there.
You've done a good job. I mean, and to respond to your earlier comment, well before we got the results of this survey, we were talking about doing a lot more with paving, about building that fund back up. We were talking about the quality of life issues, which, is reflective of, Tess's work goes a long way towards addressing many of those. And sometimes those go hand in hand with the requests that we've had for more foot patrols in the downtown. And a lot of the work that Tess is doing, I don't want to say it eliminates, because it doesn't, but it alleviates the need for foot patrols in the downtown. So it's all going hand in hand. So I think when any reasonable person looks at this, looks at the budget, I think it's almost like we read their minds. So I feel good about it. And but we got a little more work to do.
Absolutely.
We got to work. And I'm toying with the idea of maybe going a little bigger on the paving allocation. So I'll be, looking at that. Unfortunately, there are no state grants for that. We just have to continue to lobby Secretary Flynn for, because when you look at what people complain about, I look at social media as well, and I see the comments about South Main Street, not our ranch, North Main Street, not our ranch, the Beltline, not our ranch. And the areas that people are complaining about the most are not our responsibility or jurisdiction. So, but unfortunately, I don't think we're looking at a major project in Barre until currently 2029. It may even be 2030. So, yes.
Yeah, and I would just say, in terms of that South Main, we've been, working with Brian and TJ on coming up with a paving bid, and we did reach out to the state because we know South Main is so bad. We suggested, if we pave from South Main to Ayer Street, will you pave Elm Street and Summer Street all the way to Maple? It's just about the same distance in 2030, right? And we thought this is a good way to, and unfortunately, they can't
we're offering
federalize.
the state a grant, basically.
Yeah. But we figured we would sort of front the cost now of doing South Main, which is terrible. And then when they come back in 2030, they would do a section of equal distance that would also get our core downtown like fully paved. They unfortunately can't federalize those streets. And so the way their funding streams work, they would be leaving money on the table. But that was something we reached out to them about, because we hear it, we know, we don't like our city vehicles driving on it, we don't like paying claims for it. And so unfortunately, something we explore to try to get some of that done. We can't afford to do what we did with the grinding here on Main Street, which we did pay on our dime. We just can't afford to do it.
How much was that? 60?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was 60,000, and that's, so when we did Main Street, I didn't second guess Nicholas's decision to do it, but that 60,000 that didn't go to Elm Street, didn't go to Summer Street, didn't go to potholes, is 60,000 we had to spend. So we're not done yet. We're creative in those meetings, and I'm thinking, what if we loan the state the money and they can pay us back in 2030? So, we'll figure something out. North Main and South Main are they're just not going to wait another 2 years. I mean, they just can't. They're literally falling apart. And Secretary's wonderful to work with. We've got some great partners. And, if I want to feel good about being the mayor of Barre, I just talk to the Secretary of Transportation, because he's got it a lot tougher than we do right now. So, any other questions, comments for Nicholas? Yes.
Just that, first of all, the person who used their free comment period to suggest a Rotary, let's be friends. Second, I'm gratified that a lot of people said flood resiliency projects were high on their list. I know that we're always seeking grant money for that, and I think the most important takeaway there is that people are still very, very focused and paying attention, and we're not letting that go, that we are continuing to work hard on that. So that feels good that it's still on people's minds and still on people's attention.
Yeah, yes.
As I was reading through the comments, there were a lot of comments about the EMS and the fire department needing more help. And that wasn't the impression that I got when we spoke to the chief last week. So
Yeah.
there's some disconnect there.
There was an effort, there was a campaign by the union leadership to sort of encourage responses to that effect. So, yeah, so they went on They went on a podcast to encourage people to do just that.
Okay.
But I did ask the fire chief.
Yeah.
And he said they were fully staffed.
We were fully staffed, yeah.
The police department, he didn't give the number, but he said they're 3 short. But then the second line had 5, but those 5 and the 12, it's 17. No, it's 12 still because they're cross-working.
Yeah.
When I asked them that.
Yeah, and I think I noticed that too. And I also noticed that most of those are out of town resident, because the highlighted ones are non-resident comments. So I think that was indicative of as well of some of them don't live in the city, or some of them have relatives or family outside. So I did notice that as well, but I also know that there was sort of an effort to encourage that.
And, we're monitoring it. So sometimes any department, any company, any business, you can hit a rough spot. And we've all been there, where you hit a rough spot, and sometimes you have to work your way through it and the circumstances improve. This is, and listen, I appreciate how hardworking the folks at, our firefighters and EMTs are. I do. But this is a permanent decision. If we were to make a staffing decision, it is permanent. It is embedded in the contract, and it doesn't go away. And it's not an inexpensive decision. It's $250,000. I mean, here we are struggling, reducing busing from 38,000 to 12,500, and this is to add 2 people, EMT firefighter, is $250,000 decision, and it is permanent. Once it's embedded in the contract, you just don't get it out. So believe me, if we get ourselves to the point, if we find that this is more than just a rough patch, and we're not seeing corrective statistics, the manager will be on it. He just will. So, but we're, and these are not, when you're talking about public safety and you're talking about EMTs and firefighters, these are not easy decisions to consider, because it's easy for someone to say, well, if we have overlapping calls and your mom has a heart attack, she might die. Well, it's easy to say that and to put that pressure on people. Believe me, we're monitoring the situation. And if we need to hire 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 more EMTs to keep our community safe, that's what we'll do. But we're gonna consider it fully, and we're just not gonna react quickly to it and make a $250,000 mistake. So we're on it. Nicholas is on it. And thank you to all the folks. I haven't read through all of the comments. I've got quite a few pages to read through, but this is, I'd almost like to send out surveys more. I mean, I love reading these. I mean, some of them are snarky, but no, most of them are good, and it's a really good way to communicate. So even if we did it like a couple of times a year,
absolutely.
where we asked about city services and said, hey, leave your comments. I love reading these things. Yes.
I did read through them all. And one of the comments that I thought was really a good idea was that there might be some kind of official statement from the mayor or from the city manager about what the state of Barre is at any, monthly or quarterly or something like that. And one of the other things that I picked up reading this was that a lot of the snarkiness was from people who maybe didn't know all the stuff that was going on. And so we need to find a way to communicate what is available and what is happening a little better, because otherwise people, can get into that snarky place where I pay all this money in taxes and my road is a mess, and that's all they know. And there's other stuff going on. So
Understood.
it's a thought.
But we're well on our way, so nice job. Yes, do you have a No. Come on up, Carol.
I do, Tom.
Because you've been waiting for this one. We're going to discuss changes, council. We're moving on. I'm sorry.
I had one more.
Yeah, go for it.
At our little meeting Saturday, Amanda and I, one of the things that came up was the people that are asking for funding, separate funding. And they'd like to see it back the way we used to have it, where they're listed individually. Because they say a lot of them say they don't fill it out at all because, they're so hell-bent on voting for one and dead set, they're not going to pick the other. And I can't remember why we changed it.
It's more cost effective. It's incredibly expensive to print and program the ballots with literally 35 articles on them. And so it was a decision of the council to move them into one article, have them all individually listed, but have them be one article.
How much would it cost, Carol? Do you remember?
It's an additional $1,500 a year, approximately.
I mean, it seems like.
We could put that on the ballot.
We could.
How would you like your ballot
Or we
to
could
look?
just do it. Or we could just change our policy and do it. No, that's something.
It's completely a council policy.
I've heard that more than a few times from people who say, so I either vote, like, some people have said there'll be an organization there for whatever reason, and they never tell me which ones, that they really don't like, so they vote no anyway. And they're like, I'll sink the whole ship, I don't care.
The policy has been that those organizations that get grouped together are ones that did get voter approval in the past. So they're part of that group. Anything that is seeking an increase or is petitioning for new funding has its own article.
Right. Yes.
What's the history of those extra, when they were individual, did they, for the most part, just pass?
Yep.
So then it was probably also part of the
The only
decision.
time that we've had, you could pretty much call the ones that weren't going to pass. They were new and they had the names of other towns in them.
Okay.
And, Friends of the Winooski River, I would always feel so bad. I'd send them a donation. I'd feel so badly because they just failed all the time.
Yeah. But, the Montpelier Senior Center, the blah, blah, it was, they followed all the procedures, but once the voters had an opportunity to, but.
So, so that would be, if anyone's watching and they want to weigh in on that, for $1,500, if people really feel strongly about it, and I don't know that they do, I've heard from people like you have, but I don't know if they feel really strongly one way or another. It would be interesting to have people comment or kind of weigh in on it.
Personally, I only feel really strongly about it when we're working on a budget and we're trying to figure out how to reach a certain number.
I get it.
I
get it, yes.
I don't know that I feel terribly strongly about it. Is 1,500 all in, including the cost of printing additional pages and postage for mailing
You
additional
can't do
pages?
additional pages. You have to have, you have to have just one ballot. So everything has to fit on the ballot. So
is it possible
we've been able to, in the past, fit everything on the maximum size ballot, which I think is maybe 18 inches. Because one thing that's nice is that we no longer are printing the school articles on the ballot because they have their own.
That made it, as I recall, that was a really big driver because with these additional articles and the school article, it was getting virtually impossible.
And we couldn't
to get it on a ballot.
there were years where we wanted to consider charter changes. And because you either have to print all of the charter change language on the ballot, or you have to basically say, will the voters approve all the charter changes, yes or no? And you may have 6 of them that you're trying to get approved, but because you can't print them on the ballot individually, you have to put them on one yes, no question. And that becomes problematic, so. But there probably is more room on the ballot now. But I would say the $1,500 is probably an all-in cost for printing and additional programming.
Could you look into that? Thank you. Well, because it'll probably come up at our next meeting. I think I've heard it from enough people to where I think it warrants just a quick discussion, let people weigh in. Okay, council, we are at 8F on the agenda. This is a conversation that we're going to have, and we're going to discuss changes to the U.S. postmark procedure. Ma'am,
Sir,
how are you?
I'm good. How about all of you? This is meant to be the beginning of a conversation, an exploration, not expecting to make any decisions, because I think that there may be a need to hear from the public some on what we're proposing. I think it's interesting that this is something that I've been working on with the staff independently for the last maybe 3 weeks, and at the same time, independently, the town of Barre has been working on it too, because they went before their clerk went before their select board last week with exactly this same proposal for exactly the same reasons. You probably are well aware, because I know it's been brought before the council a couple times in the last few weeks, about the change that the U.S. Post Office put in place recently. It's not so much a change in practice as it is in letting people know how things are working with regards to postmarks. Mail is no longer processed locally. Any piece of mail that's dropped off at the post office here, even if it's literally going into one of the post office boxes, goes out of town, gets sorted out of town, comes back, gets divvied up and delivered. And what the post office wanted to make sure that the public understood is that because no mail is processed locally, no mail is postmarked locally. So when a piece of mail is dropped off, just dropped in a mailbox, there's one right out here on Prospect Street, it gets bundled up and sent off to a processing center, and it does not get date stamped until it goes through the machinery at the processing center. And that can be a day, 2 days, multiple days after somebody has dropped that piece of mail in the post office, in the box. Because of that, we have for decades accepted pieces of mail that bore a U.S. Post Office postmark as timely, as proof that somebody made a payment by the date that it was due, either on or before the date it was due. Unfortunately, because the post office has said publicly, that's not what the number means anymore, that's not what the date stamp means anymore, we can't depend on that date stamp as being proof that somebody has mailed a piece of mail on or before the due date. You can still go to the window and ask them to hand cancel an envelope and stamp it with the date. They will still do that. That would in fact have the right date on it, but it's dependent upon the person going in, getting it hand canceled at the window. Where it becomes challenging is a couple different things. Because we do accept postmarks up to this point in time, we're now dependent upon when mail arrives. We've all experienced a slowdown in the receipt of mail. We're now 3 days, 4 days, a week out from a due date when mail is still trickling in with timely postmarks on it. This doesn't give us an opportunity to timely close a quarter collection, and move things into the delinquent billing for unpaid bills. This then pushes our delinquencies because we're required to have 30 days between when a bill gets sent out and when it's due. And now we're just playing catch up all the way down the line as far as when we can close a quarter, when we can get the bills out. The other thing is, you'd be surprised how many envelopes come in with no postmark on them at all. Somehow they've gone through the system with nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, totally blank envelopes. The stamp is pristine. Counselor Spalding's over here going, I'm thinking she probably gets mail like that in the office. And so that gives us nothing. And so between the pieces that do have a U.S. Post Office postmark, but it was applied to the envelope 2-3 days after the person put it in the mail, or something that has no postmark at all, now a payment has come into us that we don't have any proof that it was made timely, Therefore, it gets treated as a delinquency. They get a bill, and they come in, and then we end up with the fights in the offices, where the person is, I mailed it on the due date. I mailed it the day before the due date. And the only thing we have to go on is that envelope. And when we show them the envelope and say, this is what we have, their argument is, well, that's between you and the post office. And our response is, no, it's between you and the post office. And unfortunately, there's nobody you can go to the post office to talk about the situation and get things squared away. So what we're proposing is to do away with accepting postmarks, to move to payments have to be received by close of business on the due date. Many communities do this, where this certainly wouldn't be unique for Barre City or Barre Town. We would, of course, put a tremendous amount of effort into educating the public and notification. And I spoke with Tina Lunt, the clerk up in Barre Town, and the advantage, if both communities did it at the same time, is we could really partner on educating our entire Barre community. Because there are, 1,000 Barre Town residents who are Barre City water customers, and they get their bills from us. And so the rules would apply to them. We would do inserts with water and sewer bills. We would do a postcard mailing to all property tax property owners, letting them know this would be effective with their tax bill. We would obviously do lots of social media. We would do joint articles and ads in the newspaper hopefully with Barre Town. We would put inserts. We have information printed on the back of the stubs for tax bills. We would obviously revise that language. We would do inserts with the tax bills. There obviously is a learning curve, and perhaps we would need to figure out maybe a 3 or 6 month grace period kind of way to work. A lot of people aren't going to pay attention to it until they get bit by the change. And so trying to figure out how to work that in through a grace period.
This is all municipalities, right? This is happening now?
It has nothing to do with municipalities.
And what does the U.S.
Every-
Postal say? They don't come back with a response on this?
So this is what we're proposing, the staff is proposing, is moving in this direction. We understand that it's a big lift. It's a big change. But we would do our damnedest to do outreach to the public, to do education. And as I said, our hope is that if Barre Town is doing it at the same time, that we can partner in our education and get more bang for the buck, so.
Yes.
A question I have is thinking about people can still pay by mail, they just have to send it earlier to make sure it gets here in time, whatever that might be, 2 weeks maybe. But I'm wondering if we could also, like the ballot drop boxes, there was a way to drop off a payment.
We have a drop box on
There
the
is a
front of the
drop
building.
box. Okay.
Yep. And the information about the drop box is in all the newspaper ads.
Okay.
It's printed on the tax bill.
Is it at the front door? Oh, okay. I never go to the front
With the
door.
amount of check washing going on, I will not use a Dropbox to save my life.
Check washing is when somebody literally takes a check and is able to erase everything but the signature and rewrite it to whatever
Look it
they
up,
want.
it's huge. That's why most banks now, if you have a thing called positive pay, where every morning, literally, if you're dealing in larger sums of money, every morning you actually you get a list from the bank, and you get to look at the check and see what it looks like, and you actually check each check. And when you check them and you send it back to the bank, they will process and honor those checks.
Yeah. just so you feel assured, Barre City participates in positive pay. And we do it kind of in reverse. We upload to the bank, this is the list of checks we're paying this week.
Right.
We're paying this check to this person, it's this check number to this person for this dollar amount. And then as the checks come in to be cleared, they run them against our list. And if there are any anomalies, I get an email notification and I have the opportunity to go in, examine the check and say, yes, that's legitimate, no, and so. And they default to not paying it if there's some kind of a discrepancy, so, yeah.
So interesting, I don't know, interesting conversation because, and I've said this, I love our postal delivery guy. Sean is just awesome. And, it's sad because to me, it seems like it's this death spiral, that you get to the point where, okay, I can't really rely on the postal service. And we always did everything by, paper check. They come in, they get entered in QuickBooks, we print the checks, I sign them, they go out. And now more and more, we're having to go to electronic payments because, our property tax bill, I hand deliver it to, sure, it's convenient for me, it's right here at the city council meeting, but I literally hand deliver it because it's going to be a big fine if I'm, a day late. So it's really too bad that it's come to this because the more people who move away from the Postal Service, that only makes it harder for them to collect revenue and provide service. And like I said, it's this death spiral. But we've got a city to run. My first comment would be in terms of our technology, when we pay property tax bills in other municipalities, mostly southern part of the United States, I can literally go online and I can enter my routing number, my bank account number.
You can do that here.
And it pays. You can do that here, or we have to give it to you and you enter it in?
No, as a matter of fact,
What's our
there's a link
convenience?
on the website. For an e-check like that, an ACH, it's $1.75.
For each check,
For e-check,
for a e-check.
for an e-check.
payment.
It's $1.75. We also have the,
$1.75 by the bank?
excuse me?
I don't get charged a dime for electronic transfers.
It's through the third-party vendor who we have our online access with.
Okay.
They're the ones. And we also, for online access, you can pay with e-check. You can also pay with a credit card or debit card. If you do that, then there is a 3% service charge.
Yeah,
So if
that's-
you're paying a $1,000 tax bill, that's $30. But if you're paying
When
a
you figure
$1,000 tax
that
bill, it's.
stamp is 79 cents now.
Yeah.
It's really.
So $1.75.
So it's costing you $1.
Right.
Essentially to
everything.
do that. And maybe we should push
We.
that service.
We already do. Again, it's in the ads that are in the newspaper. It's, there's a color paper insert that goes out with every tax bill that talks about sign up for direct debit. And it gives people the opportunity, it gives the information about online, but also direct debit, where we have an opportunity for people to sign up and we will automatically debit your taxes from you on the due date for free. That is not, there's no fee for it. We won't pull it early. We pull it on the due date and that's for free.
And there's no charge at all for that.
Absolutely, no charge.
So,
So our intention, of course, during this education period would be to really push the options that would hopefully help take the place of depending on a postmark, so.
so if someone signed up for the option where we pull your, we pull your payment on the, you've given us your
Yep, direct
checking
debit.
account number and we pull it, we don't charge you to do that. Is there any way that we could give someone a, say, 3-day grace period? Something goes wrong with their checkbook. And I'm thinking about the number of people who, like some people say, well, just mail it early. I mail every property tax bill we have gets mailed a month early. I'm a lot more fortunate in my life than some people are, and some people literally have to wait until the 14th to make that payment, and I'm always trying to accommodate them. So if folks would give us that information, how would you feel about saying, look, if something goes wrong, we'll give you 3-day grace period. If it takes you a few days to get straightened out, you tried.
We have all their contact information, because then when they sign up for direct debit, they do it through us. We get the, what's the property address, what's your name, what's your phone number, email address, what's your banking information. And the most common mistake is for somebody who's signing up the first time is they transpose a number or they drop a number from their routing or something like that. So the first time we go to do the direct debit, it doesn't go through, and we get notification from the bank. And we reach out to them immediately and say, hey, this didn't go through, let's confirm the numbers, and if you can get down here in 24 hours with the money, you'll be fine. We'll, it won't be considered late. We're getting things squared away the way the system's supposed to be. So we do already do that kind of outreach in those moments. Somebody does it 4 payments in a row, we start to have a little more, sterner conversations with them. But we do do that outreach right now, so.
Mm-hmm. So do they get a grace period, like one time? I'm not
We
talking
usually,
about.
yeah, like I said, it's usually, can you get down here in 24 hours, 48 hours? So yes, there is a grace period.
So, I think if you could build something like that into it, because I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you our routing number, checking account number, and I'll be done with it.
But if you have multiple, I've had it where we've had multiple accounts and they drew from the wrong account.
If you only give them one account number,
Well, I'm
they're only going to draw from one.
Other, this happens in other companies. This isn't,
Yes.
I use that direct deposit now with the ACH, which is great.
It's also available for water and sewer bills. It's also available for water and sewer bills.
Well, thank you for sharing that information with us this evening. One small request, if it is legally possible. I switched to direct deposit because I used to pay via e-check, and I was always doing it 2 minutes after 4:30, which would make them late because it closes at 4:30. Is it possible to go till midnight if we're going to encourage even more people? Because I think most people are used to electronic transactions not ending with the close of business.
The only challenge with something like that is you bend the rules for one class of people and not the other. What about somebody who shows up at 4:45 and drops the check in the drop box? But what about the piece of mail? I mean, it's hard to come up with a one-size-fits-all set of rules. So I mean, it certainly could come up with something like that, but I hate to create sort of different standards for different forms of payment.
But if you do the ACH transfer, that's probably the easiest way of all.
Oh, yeah, and we
Because
pull it first thing in the morning. We do make sure people understand we're gonna pull it first thing in the morning, because I've had arguments with people who said, well, I was gonna transfer money in at noon, but you pulled the money at 8. Yes, we did.
how long has this been going on?
We don't even have to do that. We could, again, trying to accommodate people, and trying to anticipate every excuse they may have. We could have a policy that says, look, if you've given us your banking information and it goes through, we're going to pull it on the 16th, not on the 15th. So if you make a transfer at midnight, we have it. That's a choice that we're making. Can't do it?
I just still think now we're creating different categories, different classes of payers.
Okay.
I
Fair
would
enough.
find that a little tricky. I could imagine having a conversation with the bank and saying to them, because we schedule the date, can we schedule the time? Could we possibly, in addition to scheduling on the due date, schedule it 4 o'clock on the due date or 4:30? They may not do something after their hours close, but I can imagine having that conversation
But
with
we
them.
pull the trigger, right? It works like any
We
other
set it up days in advance.
Right, but you're just setting the day.
Yes.
So they're going to do it soonest possible on that particular day.
Yeah.
So I already know the answer to your question is no. They can't. Literally, if you initiated the transaction at 4:30 on the 15th, it would take it at 4:30 on the 15th.
No, it would do it the next day.
You know,
I'm pretty sure. I'm
No,
pretty
mine
sure.
does it
Most
at
of
11
the,
o'clock.
most of the bank stuff, there's any kind of an electronic transaction, there's a cutoff sometime towards the end of their usual business hours. So my guess is that it would go to the next day, but I can have that conversation with them.
But back to the main problem, when did this start happening, when the postmark was 2-3 days later? How long was
Well,
it?
it's been going on for the last few years. 2 years ago, the post office, we started having real problems.
I was just gonna say, how prevalent is it here?
We started having problems 2-3 years ago with getting ballots here timely. I know it's been mentioned a couple times here. Cheryl's talked about how the fact in Vermont, postmarked ballots doesn't matter. You have to receive a ballot before the close of polls on election day. But a lot of people mail their ballots back. And we were having ballots arrive, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, after a Tuesday election. We went and talked to the post office and they said, oh yeah, we don't sort mail on Tuesdays anymore. And I'm like, elections always happen on Tuesdays, pretty much always happen on Tuesdays. US Postal Code requires you to give special treatment to any envelope marked official election material, and all of ours are. And they're like, yeah, well, we don't sort on Tuesdays. And that became, we don't get any, there's no mail for the offices on Tuesdays.
We don't get it a couple days a week. So it became prevalent, so now that's why we're doing this.
It started really getting noticed a couple years ago, but the post office itself came out with this statement about 4 weeks ago, that said, a postmark is no longer an indication of when a piece of mail was mailed. It's now an indication of when it was processed.
Okay, so they're getting the heat now, that's why, okay.
well, I see the merit to moving forward with this. It's change. It's literally a change that has been a policy in the city for centuries. So.
At least 20 years that I'm aware of, and it probably goes back further than that.
So, yes.
I do, just to return to my previous question, I understand your concern about creating sort of separate classes of when things are due. This change makes sense to me. I understand and appreciate all of the work you're putting into communicating out to folks. I do think and maybe it is that we check the box first thing in the morning the next day, and anything that has come in, we assume to have been come in by midnight.
Except what if they came in, dropped it off at 6 a.m. on their way to work the next day? It becomes
I understand. I'm just trying
Other communities
to
have their police departments empty the drop box at midnight.
So
it's
I think what I'm asking for and encouraging is if there is a window that we can increase to give increased flexibility to residents during a time that's going to be a significant change, I would love to think about ways to do that and would love to sort of look at plans. I totally understand that it gets a little messy.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I said, I would probably want us to think about a 3 to 6 month grace period kind of, and really codify exactly what that looks like. If a piece came in by mail and was late, if it came in the Dropbox and was late, if it was paid online and was late, how much grace period? How does that look? How many times can you do it? I would want us to actually develop something that people could count on. So, I'm sorry, Councilor Hilgert.
I was just going to say two things. I like the idea of having the police department empty the drop boxes
They won't.
at midnight.
Absolutely not.
They won't.
Nope.
But they won't. But another and the other thing has escaped me. Sorry. It'll come back.
Councilor Spaulding?
I hear what you're saying about not creating different deadlines, but I also think if you did say if you give us the ACH, we'll do it, we'll take it out on the 16th or midnight or whatever it might be, it's an incentive to get more people to do that. That might be the carrot that gets more people to say, I'm going to let you have my bank account information because I know it's going to come out at the last possible moment versus me having to send it in the mail. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying it could be a,
You
it
know what,
could be
Carol?
a, it could
I
be like a
trust
little
you.
sweetener to get people to sign
I
up.
trust you to come up with something fair. I trust you to, and Cheryl, to think about all the options and think about, we've all raised some good reasons why, well, could we make it the next day? But, we already, I think it's a 1% penalty if you're late.
It's a 1% interest, it's a 3% penalty.
Right, but we had what was the one where we ramped it up? It used to be.
Used to be 8% penalty and 1% interest, starting at 4/31 on the due date.
Yeah, and then we changed that and we said, look, just to give some consideration to folks who might miss it by 1 or 2 days, that's a little different than somebody who misses it by a month.
Yeah.
So we actually reduced the penalty by 5%, and we could, I mean, it
For the first
stinks
30
for your
days.
office because you'd have more calculating to do, but we could even say, look at your 48, if you're within 48 hours, it's 1% interest and a 1% penalty. After
Just
48 hours,
if-
it goes to 3%, and then.
Just, that would require a charter change.
Yeah, I know, but at least then, but we've got an election in November, so we could manage a special election.
And August.
I mean, I trust you to come up with a program that we can all appreciate and all get behind, because you and Cheryl, not as long, obviously, for Cheryl, but, you've been working with people for decades, and so you understand the people, you recognize the people who are sincere versus the people who are kind of gaming the system a little bit, but I got to tell you, the post office makes it, sometimes with the challenges they have, it even makes that challenging.
Yeah.
Karen was talking to me about her mom's property tax bill that arrived with a valid, and Karen, went up and reissued a check and paid the late fee and all that stuff, and it arrived at Berrytown 6 weeks with a valid 6 weeks later with a valid postmark.
And that happens
And-
here.
and they were
when
great.
it
I mean,
does,
they
we
refunded
immediately
the
go in
penalty,
and-
but-
Exactly. We immediately, if we get an envelope with the right postmark, 6 weeks after, we go right in and we remove or refund the penalties and interest and, because that's what our policy is.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's most important to me, and I'm working with Cheryl and with Clint in the Water and Sewer Billing Department and with Sylvie down in the Collections Office, because we're the ones that are working with the envelopes and the postmarks. What's most important to all of us is that we come up with something that treats everybody the same.
Yep,
And,
I agree.
And that's the most important thing. And that we do as much education as is possible. And I do think we would want to come up with some kind of a soft opening kind of thing, some sort of a 3-month or 6-month period where there's a little flexibility, but we document what that flexibility looks like. So that we're not being accused of, well, you were nice to my neighbor, but you weren't nice to me. Well,
Because we don't like you.
and you've been delinquent 8 times out of the last 12, so.
No, I get it.
But-
No, like I said, I trust you and Cheryl to come up with something that will work. And, obviously and even if someone makes an honest mistake or just makes a mistake, and, I've seen you work with people who get assessed a $100 penalty, and you've told them, look, you can pay it over 10 months.
Oh, yeah.
Because you do have, that's where you do have flexibility. So I trust you and Cheryl to be kind, but also you've got a fiduciary responsibility to the city. I think we all get that too.
So we'll come back to you, probably sometime in mid to late March, with some ideas, and figure out where we're going from there.
And bring all the information. I mean, once someone gives you their bank account information and you're crediting, it's not a tremendous amount of work. It's actually easier for your office, isn't it?
It is a little laborious because you've got to do all this data entry into our tax collection system. You have to pull the report from that. You have to literally confirm every entry because we want to make sure because of the fact that we've got, tax bills in this state fluctuate depending on whether somebody's done a late homestead declaration or done it, it's not just a one and done number for taxes. But, so there is a double check, but it's certainly easier on a per parcel basis to do direct debit than to process a check.
Gotcha.
That either comes in somebody at the counter or through the mail. So, yes,
Because you can do that in advance,
exactly.
which is why I've always tried to mail. I know how busy you are on the 15th, so I try to mail the checks early so it gets there a few weeks before and you're not as busy,
So,
All right, any other questions, comments, council? We trust both of you.
thank
And
you.
we'll blame you if something goes wrong, too.
Exactly. You won't be the only ones.
You own it. Okay, council, I don't have anything under, I've got a few notations for our March 17th meeting that you've made previously. Other than that, I don't know if anyone has anything under upcoming business.
Can I ask a question about
Of course.
upcoming business? We're not going to meet for quite a while.
Right.
This is my newbie status still, I guess. How will we do the warrants and things like that?
I sign them.
You'll just sign them, and then we'll approve them all.
I'm
when we're
looking
done?
ratified.
Yeah, in our off weeks, I actually, they send me the warrants and I sign them, and then they're ratified. They're on our consent
Okay,
agenda
so
as
we're going to have a
ratification.
whopping longest consent.
Yeah, but
agenda.
don't be surprised. We may shock Nicholas and actually pull off a council meeting in the first week of March.
right.
I mean, 3 weeks is a long time to have, it is town meeting day. People kind of have that on their minds, so don't be surprised if I call a special meeting and we're going to work. Okay, roundtable. Counselor.
What a beautiful talent show Barre City School had this last week. Just really wanted to start off with that and end with, the art show will be, on the 14th, I believe it is. I gave you all, an invitation to that last week. Just lots of great opportunities to show up and support our community. With some of these kiddos that are working so hard in so many different ways. So,
Fantastic. Counselor Hookartner.
Yes, Sonia and Councilor Spalding and I are going to have a Ward 1 meeting at the Aldrich Public Library on the 18th at 5:30. And we'll have a budget presentation and we'll talk to people about their questions, answer their questions. So those of you watching, everyone, you don't have to be in Ward 1 to come, just show up. That's 5:30 on the 18th, it's a Wednesday.
Thank you. Counselor Guston.
Pass.
Counselor Bergeron.
Yes.
Counselor Spalding.
Yeah, just ditto what my other Ward 1 counselor said.
Counselor Ruthier. So, yeah, I wish the Patriots had had a talent competition on Sunday. No, it was a defensive game.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I'm a Patriot fan through and through, but Seattle came to play and they were the better team. They just, I mean, their defense just held us tough and held us for the whole game, but we got to the big show, and I do appreciate the lights on City Hall. And so first week in March, would anyone have an objection to having a special council meeting?
Is the first full week March is town meeting day?
Yep.
Yes.
So would we
No.
meet on?
No, I do it on like a Tuesday or a Thursday.
First weekend in March, that's the,
First week in March.
Yes.
That's
Not on
very
a Tuesday.
city.
I wouldn't
Not on
do
the
that.
Tuesday.
Okay.
No,
Thank you. I just
that's
wanted to
town meeting
clarify
day,
that.
so most people are off that day.
I am.
So most people aren't working that day anyway. Okay, we'll be in touch with that, council.
Are you going to do a Zoom option?
A what?
A Zoom option? A
No.
virtual option?
No. We'll do something fun.
Okay.
I actually have one more question for the city manager. I've noticed that there are holiday lights still up around the light poles on the street and stuff. Does that stay up all?
No, they come down. We met with Tracy. We have a quarterly meeting with Tracy, and I know she's working with some volunteers to bring those down.
And then the other question was, there's this lovely heart in the
Yeah.
gazebo, but half of it is.
They're working on that. I know there's
Okay.
I think there's some
Is this
wiring
Spirit
issues with,
Partnerships, I think?
it belongs to the
I'll talk-
partnership.
I'll talk to.
Its biggest issue is the weather.
Yeah, it's been awful.
Just been
It's been so.
so good, because you actually, it's hard to take those down or put them up
Yeah.
with gloves on.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been so god awful cold. I mean, I think this is, I saw that, I think this is the first week we've actually strung together, or we will string together 5 days above 20 degrees in
know, it's been
a
awful.
very, very long time. And it's been hard on, obviously hard on, be nice to your fuel delivery people. They are running
Taking a
ragged.
beating right
It
now.
is, that is a tough business to be in right now, and be even kinder to the organizations that raise funds to help fuel our neighbors, because they're not going to make it through the winter, not even close. It's just not, degree days are up over 20%, which we do a lot of consulting in the propane industry. 20% swing year on year is virtually unheard of. It just doesn't happen. So it's been a tough one, and with that, council, we will, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Wait,
Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
that's left over then.
That must be.
Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, no, we don't need it.
Okay, sorry.
Nope, my
Never
bad.
mind.
Mandy, you just